Good morning and good afternoon. My name is John Herbst and I run the Eurasia Center at the Atlantic Council. We have a very interesting, if a bit of a niche event for you today on green energy in Ukraine. Our strong panel includes Anders Osson, the resident senior fellow at our Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center, Alex Ryabchin, Energy and European Green Deal Advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, Alina Sviderska, General Manager of Scatec ASA in Ukraine, and Ambassador Roman Waschuk, Canada's long-serving ambassador to Ukraine till 2019. Okay, this event is being brought to you in partnership with Refraction Asset Management, TIU Canada, who are wonderful partners of ours. I'd like to start by asking Anders a question. Anders, how does green energy fit in Ukraine's energy plans and in the future?
Well, Ukraine has opted quite strongly for green energy, thanks to legislation that goes back to 2008 with a special feed-in tariffs for both solar and wind energy. Ukraine's old dilemma has been very high energy consumption, and a lot has been done in order to reduce that. Just think of it, when the Soviet Union fell apart, Ukraine used 130 billion cubic meters a year in order to keep going. Today, it's down to just over 30 billion cubic meters a year. This is partly because of old, inefficient industries that have closed down, partly because of some energy saving. And the role of green energy here, I mean wind and solar, is about 11% of total electricity production today. The rest is a bit more than 50% is nuclear energy, and then it is primarily coal energy in the balance, a little bit of hydropower also. So Ukraine has done quite well in developing renewable green energy. The concern people have is that this 11% of all electricity costs about 30% of the whole cost for government purchases of electricity.
Anders, thank you. I forgot to mention in my lead up that we are doing this event with our partners, the Global Energy Center at the Atlantic Council. Okay, Anders, thank you. Alex, Ukraine has, climate change is the important backdrop to this whole issue of green energy. And Ukraine has had its recent NDC update, and Ukraine has its commitments to align with the EU Green Deal, excuse me. What is your take on this?
Yes, thank you very much for organizing this brilliant roundtable and to have an opportunity to discuss the green transformation of Ukraine, because yes, definitely everybody, especially internationals, are concerned Ukraine is not paying what it has promised to the investors. But I would like to give a bigger framework that Ukraine is embedded to the global commitments to fight the climate change, and this is why people are investing worldwide into the green energy. This is why government spends more money stimulating the green energy transformation, stimulating the energy efficiency, stimulating the development of the hydrogen, of the e-mobility. So this is a part of a bigger picture. And yes, we are about to update our NDCs, and the government has a huge amount of a discussion, but it could be, I fingers crossed, that for the first time in Ukrainian history, it would be not a hot air that we were trying to sell, because of the deindustrialization process from the Soviet Union, but this would be the ambitious NDCs. And this is very important in the context that this also sends signal to the investor that you need to invest into green energy, you need to invest in storages and hydrogen in many other spheres. But here we have these obstacles for many investors that Ukraine, unfortunately, is not fulfilling its obligation. And I would say there are many reasons, but for me, it's like the Ukrainian government, Ukrainian parliament, Ukrainian president, currently and previously, and I was a member of previous convocation of the parliament, and I used to serve as a deputy minister and the Minister of Energy, Environment and Protection. So, like, of course, Andres Aslan's told about the enormous debt that we have and enormous challenges, but like one of the biggest challenges is like more intellectual work, how to implement the third energy package. I would remember, for those who is not following the EU legislation, it's about the unbundling or about the market creation. So we are creating markets, which our Eastern European friend, for example, created 20, 30 years ago. So we're creating the markets currently. It's like challenging issue, but simultaneously we're trying to implement the fourth energy package, so decarbonization. And we have the already, like, let's call it the fifth energy package, which is a Green Deal, which is like more debt decarbonization. And to do these three things simultaneously is quite challenging. And this is why sometimes market fails, which we now see in the case with the green investors.
Alex, thank you very much. Alina, like other countries, Ukraine has offered major incentives to encourage investment, both domestic and foreign, in green energy, but has found it difficult to actually meet its commitments. What happened in Ukraine and why?
Thank you for the question. Actually, if I were not from the industry, but a person from the outside, I would definitely say that because of the highest green tariff in the Europe. But I'm from the industry and I know how it all works. And I must tell you that the tariff is not that high. And the reason for that is that building projects in Ukraine is quite expensive. And our company is building all over the world, from Brazil, from Africa, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and in Ukraine is quite expensive. So when we talk about the high feed-in tariff, we have to correlate it with the project expenses, the CapExes. So, and when you compare that, you can see that the tariffs are not that high. Nevertheless, the government decided to decrease that last year. And we see that the problems didn't disappear. And the reason for that, Alex has already mentioned that, is that we don't have the market yet. And all the problems started from the 1st July 2019, when there was the launch of the new electricity market. But we can see that it's market only on the paper. We still have price caps, we still have a lot of cross subsidies. And because the market is failing, we can see a lot of debts all over the places, not only green energy. Green energy is just like one of the things on the spotlight. And we were the one who suffered during the last year after the feed-in tariffs. We see that even with the feed-in tariff reductions, the problems are not solved, and probably they will even continue. And it will be hard to attract investments in other spheres, such as storage, hydrogen, until we have an actual market in place. And that's the work of the Cabinet of Ministers. That's the work of the Parliament to make it actually happen. But that would also mean that then probably the prices for the population would increase because they are now involved in the cross subsidies. And that's kind of a whole long discussion and whole difficult political process, but it has to start, and there has to be collaboration between the Parliament, the Cabinet of Ministers, the national regulator, the Ukrenergo, and all the state bodies. So that's just a brief overview of the question you asked.
All right. Let me just do a quick follow-up here.
Sure.
You're suggesting that essentially this is a systemic problem. Exactly. It's not simply a green energy problem. It requires large overall reform, correct?
Yeah, exactly. It just was convenient on the public sphere to say that it's just green energy, like rich oligarchs, and mainly DTEC, who is the guilty in all the problems. But I have to say that green energy in Ukraine is one of the most decentralized energy spheres. We have like 800 companies on the market, and 30% of them are from international investors like us, NBT, TU, Eurocap from the US, VR Capital, and DTEC is only 15% of the market. So actually, if Ukraine wants a really decentralized competitive market, it has to invest more in green energy, because this is the only decentralized energy industry in Ukraine.
Roman, Last summer, Ukraine agreed to pay its commitment, but at a 15% discount. But the agreement has not been implemented. Why? Is this inadequate resources, or is there something else? Is corruption?
Yeah, we've heard about the intellectual challenges and the systemic challenges, but there are usually, in Ukraine, there are always humans and companies behind the reasons for the challenges. So I think we saw some repayments start late last summer, August 2020. They've sputtered. There's the distributor Ukrenergo, which was supposed to be able to issue bonds to cover some of the arrears payments. But then gamesmanship, the Ministry of Finance hasn't authorized the bonds, then the electricity regulator doesn't. And one of the problems with creating all these institutions, many of them notionally independent in Ukraine, is that ultimately then nobody's accountable. If you're a behind the scenes player, you're able to manipulate these notionally shiny independent institutions to achieve your goals. So for example, the National Electricity Market Regulator decided to browbeat Ukrenergo into redirecting half of the money that was supposed to go to green energy to keep atomic energy going, Energoatom, and hydro energy. There is, to name a name behind some of these distortions, and that name is Mr. Kolomoisky, who is very good at figuring out ways of gaming systems. And so he took this newly ostensibly competitive market and has managed to work it to subsidize his own energy-intensive companies through influence in the management, among other places, of Centrenergo for a while. So in a sense, what he was doing was he was scooping up power at half price and below cost of production from the nuclear generator, and so draining the reserves, which would have been needed to pay green tariff commitments for renewables. So while it's true that DTEC only accounts for 15 to 20% of the renewables market, you have essentially a conflict between sort of a Japanese monster movie conflict of battle of the oligarch titans. You have Kolomoisky, who's primarily an energy consumer for his rather energy inefficient industries, and Akhmetov, who is primarily in this respect an electricity producer. And so like in those monster movies, others get trampled, like many of those 800 companies. And here I point out, for example, the role of Nikopol ferroalloys and how it's been squeezing TIU Canada. That's a little micro example of people getting squashed in the battle. So yes, you can have technocratic solutions, but you also need what are essentially law enforcement, anti-monopoly, and political solutions to this situation.
Roman, just so our audience better understands, describe what you said happened with Nikopol Ferros and TIU.
So I was the person snipping the ribbon at the opening of the plant.
This was when? You were ambassador at the time.
Yeah, I was ambassador. This would have been, I think, January 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Cold day, but seemed worthwhile. On a brownfield site just adjacent to the Nikopol ferroalloy plant. And the advantage being that Nikopol ferroalloys has a transformer station that you can link up to. So you take this derelict piece of land, at TIU, put a 10 megawatt solar station on it. I think it was the first foreign owned one in Ukraine at that point. And you connect it and you sell into the grid until Nikopol ferroalloy says, sorry, we're shutting down for repairs for an indeterminate period of time. Oh, too bad. You can't sell into the grid. Maybe if we have a quiet conversation, maybe you'd like to sell us the plant because you can't feed into the grid anyway. So that's the kind of micro problem that's part of this bigger macro situation.
Thank you. Alex, the problems we're describing with payments, what impact is this having on investment in green energy, or perhaps even in other energy areas?
Definitely, as everybody mentioned, like it has a particular problem, but I would not estimate the problem, because I see that currently no investment, because there is a kind of lack of legislation. Because this year particularly, there should have been an auction system in place in Ukraine, and we should have at least a test auction, and at least the government should have 2 auctions already this year. But it not happening, and I guess auctions are the key to solve many problems, because those who already built and has problem, it's one piece of paper, we need to solve it, and there are a lot of discussion with the green bonds, with other, but unfortunately, to my understanding of situation, yet the problem is not nobody knows how to solve the problem finally. But we need to think also about the new project. And there are investors who are interested in green energy, but we need to have auctions in place. But also, a lot of people are interested in storages. We already have 1 storage in Ukraine produced by DTEC. A huge amount of people are interested in hydrogen energy, huge amount. And what's interesting that hydrogen, especially green hydrogen, if you're speaking about, Germans are interested in this. It means that you are building the solar or wind farm, and you are not selling it to the grid. You are just use it for the hydrogen production. So it's another math, another finance opportunity for this. But without it's about the investors do not have enough trust to the Ukrainian government. So this is why we definitely need to solve this situation. And there are plenty amount of stuff that we need to introduce. Corporate PPAs could help the situation. So it's a piece of legislation that the producers will sell directly to the industries, to Kolomoisky, to any other people, because they are required to buy some percentage of energy if they want to trade with Europe. We need to have certificates of origin. We need to have these flexible auctions. We need to have feed-in premium. We need to have net bidding, net metering. So we need to introduce a lot of self-work that the governments could do, if not just speaking about the finance problem, which is already there. So plenty of reforms needs to be done in order to green energy be efficient in Ukraine.
All right, you just said you offered a variety of measures like auctions and meters and such. Alex, are you suggesting that those steps can be taken without going after more fundamental reforms?
It's a very, very philosophical situation. It reminds me when we ask for joining the NATO, and we are saying you need to fight with the corruption. Well, I would name a lot of countries who are the members of NATO and they are corrupted. It's all the time Ukrainians are trying to do, and the West is saying you need to do reforms, you need to do justice, you need to do corruption, you need to do corporate governance, you need to do a lot of this kind of stuff. It's a philosophical question. Of course, definitely we need to do our homework. Of course, and we are moving toward this, and we are driven not only by our international agreement like European Integration or Association Agreement or IMF. It's for us, it's for our economy. This is what we need, and this is a battle between conservative and progressives. Sometimes progressives win, sometimes conservatives win. It's a constant reform process in Ukraine. And of course, John, you are following this debate for many, many decades. But you definitely could say that we are progressing in it. We are moving slowly, but doing this in the right direction. Definitely, we need to have markets. Definitely, we need to have proper legal system, and it will be I'm European optimist, and we will do everything will be okay.
Alina, earlier you had spoken about the problems we're finding in green energy as related to overall systemic reforms. I don't think Alex contradicted that, but he offered a variety of steps short of that, which could help solve this. I would appreciate your views on this.
Sure. Actually, to be honest, Alex mentioned the auctions, and the mood in the investors, between the investors, is that there is a lack of trust towards the governmental support. And whenever the government is saying there will be auctions, and then the government will pay to investors, either for green energy or for the storage, there is simply a lack of trust. And I'm not sure that there will be an interest in auctions, at least until the system works, until the system can generate money. Well, Alex, I see Alex is shaking his head, but that's the general mood. And even our company is still auctions. Okay, we need to see how it all works. And I see more interest in the market, actually participating in the market, having the corporate PPAs. And I see also the request from the companies, how the corporate PPAs will work. But even for the corporate PPAs being effective, there is a need for the market once again. So right now, the market price is not real, it's distorted. It will be more or less realistic once the price caps are taken out, once we have the more realistic CO2 tax, something closer to what the European Union is having. And once we have the CO2 tax, the market price will increase. And after that happens, then everybody would be interested in green energy, because suddenly green energy will finally become cheaper than the price of the market. So that's kind of the future where we're looking at. And every time we're doing market predictions, especially playing with the CO2 tax, we see that the market price will increase. And that's where a lot of companies are looking at. We are looking at the healthy electricity market. And that's what we have to have if we want to join the European Union, the NCOE, and this is an inevitable future.
Roman, I'd like to bring in you here, and then I'll turn to Anders next. You spent 5 years as ambassador in Ukraine. You've watched and you've participated as the United States, as the West, Canada, the United States, the EU, the international financial institutions engaged on reform in Ukraine. How helpful has this foreign intervention, or this foreign role rather, been in the green energy area?
Okay, let me give you a little vignette. This is probably around 2017. I'm on a regional trip to Dnipro, and I get a phone call from the person who was then head of the independent regulator saying, we've got this guy, he's a member, but he's actually representing this vested interest, and he's pretending to be sick. So he's in hospital. So maybe he doesn't know your number yet, and you're an ambassador. So maybe you could call him and get him to show up so we could have quorum to make a decision on, among other things, a Canadian related project. So I end up calling this guy in a hospital room. He initially talks to me until he realizes who I am. Then he suddenly gets very sick again and stops talking to me. So I think this is sort of the worst practice, which is where you create a notionally shiny independent entity, but it's actually immediately suborned by people who have a lot more time to devote to being sneaky than we have to devote to it being clean and effective. So what I would say is that you either need to deliver on the commitment for full liberalization and the market, cut back on the meddling, the gamesmanship, and that means that needs to come from the top. Or, and I think maybe nobody will agree with me on this, but you might need to reinstate an accountable public distribution and tariff entity. What you need is you have either a freely and transparently operating market or a publicly accountable entity to do this. What you don't want is 4 or 5 different entities which are influenced by various players, and then a representative come and say, well, unfortunately, we can't do anything because everybody's independent and for some reason it's not happening. And there's no one to really ask why. So this current notional liberalization with price restrictions and captured market players is unsustainable. I'd see the looming shadow of EU border carbon tariffs as another incentive to move forward, quite apart from Ukraine's de-oligarchization needs, because those coming tariffs will target precisely the energy inefficient sectors that are the oligarchic bread and butter, coal, steel, cement, fertilizer, and electrical power generation. So Ukraine needs a better power mix and a more understandable market so as not to be clobbered for overdependence on declining industries.
Rob, thank you very much. Anders, I would appreciate your view on the general discussion we're having right now about how one can fix this problem. Do you need larger reform measures? Can you do it relatively economically? I mean, in terms of measures.
Yeah, thank you, John. I'm listening with great interest, and I thought that I could try to summarize what we have heard. Alex has said we need a policy. Alina has said we need a market, and Roman has said we need a system. And all three are, of course, perfectly correct. So the question is, what specifically is the problem? And I would say that Roman said nobody's accountable, true. But nobody makes a policy and nobody decides. During the last 2 years, if I've counted correctly, Ukraine has had 6 energy ministers confirmed or acting. And under such circumstances, you can't have an energy policy. And as Alina pointed out, it all started on the 1st of July, 2019. And during that period, Ukraine has been unable to make a policy. There must be some stability and order in government decision-making. So the current, previously energy policy has essentially been done by the energy ministry and secondly by the cabinet of ministers. Both these entities are now without any power or significance. Policy is made in 2 places. Most of all in the presidential office, and not by President Zelensky himself, but by his top assistants. I presume that Sergei Shefir, his first assistant, is most responsible for electricity policy. And then it's being made in the Rada by the Energy Committee, where we have had a continuity since August 2019. So these are the stable entities, but the presidential office and the Rada are not the right policy-making places. Ukraine, that is the current administration, simply needs to give the Ministry of Energy real power so that it can form a policy. And the Prime Minister, Mr. Shmyhal, knows electricity very well since he has been working as head of one of Rinat Akhmetov's companies in this field belonging to DTEC. They both claim that they have never met, which I presume is correct, but Prime Minister Shmyhal certainly knows these matters better than anybody else who is involved in the current decision making. So this is really what needs to be done. And I think it's very important what Roman said about the EU carbon border tariff that is coming, and it will hit Ukrainian production of steel very hard, because the steel production as it is now contains far too much carbon for the EU taste, and it's probably not sufficiently transparent either. So this is important, as all the others have said.
Anders, that was brilliant. Thank you. But in effect, you are confirming that the problem with green energy that we're describing is a uniquely or almost uniquely Ukrainian problem. But we know there are other states that have had trouble also with green investment and meeting their commitments to those investors. Are there any lessons we can take from some of those other countries which might apply here and help bring a solution?
Well, I looked it up, and there are more than 50 countries that have had green tariffs. And so this is a standard feature. The big pioneer on this was Germany, that adopted a law on green tariffs in 2000. And another country that did a lot on green tariffs early on was Spain. What they did in connection with a global financial crisis in 2008 was that they cut the tariffs, that they simply legislated. Ukraine took one step in that direction last summer, legislating on lower tariffs. Problems in Ukraine is that the foreign investors have been promised very high tariffs for a long time. And so therefore the Ukrainian situation is more complicated. But you have to make a policy and you have to make decisions. And this is what Ukraine has not done during the last 2 years. This is no surprise that Ukraine gets problems with these high tariffs. And during the years 2016 to 2019, green energy was the major source of foreign direct investment in Ukraine. When the problems started in 2019, this was pretty much stopped. And last year we saw that the net foreign direct investment in Ukraine was minus 800. And I would say that the situation on the green energy market, or if we should call it a market, is so serious that Ukraine hardly will get any foreign direct investment at all. So it's not only an electricity question, it's a question of, is the Ukrainian government to provide a reasonably reliable framework so that one can invest in Ukraine today? We have a similar but not quite as bad situation in gas. And we have a big problem with poor property rights in Ukraine, as in all the post-Soviet countries. And corporate raiding is quite serious. So you can say that this is the straw that breaks the camel's back, so that Ukraine today, unfortunately, does not look as a place where one can invest. I can see that Alex shakes his head.
Well, in fact, I'm turning to Alex now to see if he agrees with that assessment, especially of the impact of these green energy problems on foreign direct investment in Ukraine.
Like I'm all the time. Sorry, I've been very emotional trying to show my reaction.
We like
I will
that.
be very okay.
Contribute to a lively discussion, please.
I will continue doing this, but I would be very provocative, like if you allow me, with all respect, because I'm just a humble advisor, so I'm not a government official. I'm not a deputy minister, not a members of parliament. I'm just a humble advisor, and I'm advising to the vice prime minister. I'm advising to the minister of environment on climate change policy. I'm also a part of a team advising to the USA ESP project, energy security project, which is one of the biggest, advising to Ukraine. Also, I started to work as advisor for Yuri Vitrenko on his plan to decarbonize Naftogaz and to do a lot of interesting activity with our gas company to do it much more. But like speaking with the ESP people, energy security project in USA, we also discuss a lot of the things with the renewable situation. And like when I said like whether Ukraine is the most corrupted and the most regulatory problem country, they said no, like we have huge amount of experts that like Ukraine wouldn't be in our top 10 of corruptive and problematic country. So basically, yes, definitely we have a huge amount of problem, but like let's be honest, 80 or 90% of these debts are being paid. So it's only 10, 15 to 20% that is not yet delivered, and we're speaking how to deliver this, and our prime minister is trying to make it happen. So it's not that worth that like everybody would not invest to Ukraine. Also, let's be honest. I was a member of parliament in 2000, like previous allocation, and I know exactly because I was a member of energy committee, the discussion that time. In 2017, everybody was spoken that like the amount of money that the market generate will be not enough if all this project will be completed under the feed-in tariff. And in 2017, we started to discuss that let's shift to auction. But first people who come, it was a private investor and IFIs. I would not mention any IFI, but everybody knows who is investing in Ukraine. And they said that no, we already have huge amount of portfolio of projects, so let's not do auction that time. Let's do auction, let's postpone them. And there was a little bit enough to postpone the auction up to 2019. And then it was an amendment that the project who was under the commitment until 2021 also should be applicable to auction. So it was clear for everybody that it would be the same situation. And also we have huge amount of advisors, international, how to run the electricity market. I didn't vote for electricity market because of that reason. It's not a market, it market failure. And this had happened. So this scenario was already prognosed. and blaming Ukrainian official on Ukrainian that you are not fulfilling its obligation. Let's share the responsibility, because a lot of advices that we receive and that time was not properly implemented. Of course, we could say about government failure, about the market failure, about the institutional capacity, but this is the reality. But I would say that Ukraine is the worst place to invest. And to respond to the proposition to make government ministry more stronger, it's a Soviet approach. Unfortunately, I used to work in the ministry, and the ministry should do policy. Ministry should not intervene, like it should steer, like the old Soviet way. Currently, the ministry is not able to do anything, because neither Ukrenergo, the TSO, is subordinate to ministry, nor the gas TSO, neither Naftogaz. So the ministry is they should do proper policy. But if they start to intervene, I guess they need to have more on the flexible auction, because unfortunately, it's very strict law. The same with the feed-in tariff. Why members of parliament should set up the tariff? It's not really properly function. And the last remark about the CBAM. We just wrote an article on the CBAM. It's on Ukrainska Pravda on the top page. I'm also advising the group of negation or a CBAM. So yeah, definitely it will be the game changer. It will be very interesting to see how it will be developed, and very interesting to discuss maybe in different roundtable how US will react on CBAM, on this carbon leakage problem, and how this carbon pricing would affect the trade, basically.
Thank you for your impassioned response. I'm just see you wanted to respond, so please go ahead, and then we'll see if Roman and Alina want to weigh in as well. So, because we've had a mother load of controversy here. Okay,
yeah,
please.
I would rather try to say that I think that Alex and I agree. Everybody could see that there is not sufficient money, and it's very interesting, as you say, that you were fully aware of it in 2017 in the Energy Committee. I heard it from many places. Well, I cannot say exactly when it was spoken. It should have been decided about earlier. So I'm not only blaming the current government, but also the previous government. They should have made a policy. We totally agree that the energy ministry should do policy. You confirmed what I said, that the parliamentarians are making policy now because there is a policy vacuum, and that is the wrong way of doing it. It's no surprise to me that IFIs come with some silly proposals sometimes, but that's why one needs to have a strong Ukrainian government that can make policies. I really feel that we are agreeing. And what I'm saying is make policy, make decisions, take responsibility for it. This is the job of the government. I'm not saying that the ministry should interfere. That is exactly what should not be done. So it appears to be that we actually completely agree, only that we formulate it slightly differently.
Lena, you want to jump in? Or not? That's the case. Please go ahead.
Maybe.
Hey, Roman, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could jump in to agree with Alex on the fact that, Western advisors need to think again about how they foisted this model on Ukraine. So yes, obviously the Ukrainian government and Ukrainian parliamentarians are responsible for the decisions they made, but they were strongly encouraged in this direction by advisors who should have been much more aware of the environment they were operating in, and partially the lack of economic capacity, but then also the likelihood of gaming the system that would occur. So I would say in future, in the policy making, which, as Anders correctly says, the energy ministry should make, a kind of KISS principle should be applied organizationally to try and keep the organizational infrastructure as simple as possible, as understandable as possible, both for Ukrainians and outsiders. And certainly, yes, the EBRD was, to name the nameless IFI, was aware of the coming capacity problem. They, in fact, throttled back on support to solar projects in 2017, 2018. I think the shift to auctions should have happened earlier. I think one of the unfortunate things that happened is that the previously mandated and again internationally encouraged shift to the new electricity market coincided with a shift in presidential and later parliamentary governance, so that the loss of focus and loss of policy direction coincided with the introduction of this instrument, which could be both used and abused by players.
We have questions from the audience, so I'll turn to them now. From Ostap Yarish, the question is this. Some energy experts say that Germany and the US now need to invest in Ukraine green energy as some sort of compensation for Nord Stream 2. What do you think about such an idea and what should be done in the first place? Before I turn this over to our panel, let me just note that while President Biden made a disastrous decision on Nord Stream 2, that decision may still not stand. Congress is unhappy with it. Germany has provided nothing, and Putin is bragging how he'll cut off supplies of gas through Ukraine. But with that, who'd like to take Ostap's question?
If I may.
Please.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the brilliant question, and thanks for our moderator for for helping me not to form my own opinion in regards to the decision of your authorities to waive Nord Stream out of sanction. I guess this is outrageous. I would say allowing to finish this project, it doesn't really matter whether it's 99% or 90, it still does not function. And this is not only about the economic problem that will bring Ukraine, it's also bring us a huge amount of security problems. And let's speak about the Green Deal and Nord Stream. One could say there is no leakages, but yes, it is. Because if we are about to decarbonize, if we are about to, for example, shift to hydrogen, in the long term, how could we ship the hydrogen with our pipelines if it will not be filled with the gas transit system? So German, it's kind of for me, it's a double standard, because this is what I'm openly saying, speaking with the German members of parliament from different parties. You want a green hydrogen produced from Ukraine and shipped to Germany. It's needed for your industries, but how could we do this if we would not have contracts from 2024? We didn't have this kind of a guarantees, only just the politicians that are saying. So this definitely a huge question for us. And also another aspect, if we speak about the financial, the decarbonization for Ukraine, the feed-in energy, we need to pay around $100 billion till 2030. It's both governmental spending and business spending for decarbonization to reach the ambitious NDCs. So basically our NDCs are currently 61%. We are about to set a target 65. And this will be a decreasement. So we need to invest in 10 years, $100 billion. We need to pay for the feed-in tariff around $10 to $12 billion. We already have debt for $1 billion for the green investor. CBAM will bring us from, $5 to $7 billion. And the Nord Stream will take out $2 billion annually. And it might take us, from $10 billion till 2030 to reconfigure our pipeline. How could we afford this kind of a decarbonization? So now we're forced to do the anti-corruption reform, market reforms. How could we afford decarbonization? And this is the next big thing that we will be pushed. So a lot of questions that Ukrainians will ask to our Western partners. And the Nord Stream 2 is one of the milestones that is could be the cornerstone of problematic of our decarbonization.
Thank you. Alina, I see you nodding in agreement. Do you want to offer any comment here?
Sure. It's just very interesting angle which Alex said is that decarbonization seems expensive, right? And whenever the government is saying that we're doing a EU Green Deal, we're totally decarbonizing economy, there is never an economic plan of how it's going to be done. Who will actually pay for that? And on the other hand, there is another side of that. Not doing decarbonization is even more expensive. And that's another numbers which we don't talk about. We don't talk about nuclear plants decommissioning. How much does it cost? where the price lands. Will it land in the household prices, or we will take another loans, or what will happen? So the real numbers are not being discussed, and that's actually a problem.
We have a question from Matt S., a rather complicated question. How does Ukraine's energy market affect Moldova? And is there any partnership between Ukraine and Poland or Romania? They might constitute an energy triangle for Eastern Europe. Also, not necessarily advocating for nuclear power, but partnering with French nuclear industry could also get more French stakes in Ukraine's success. Is that a consideration? Now, there are multiple questions in that single question. Alina, you're smiling. Would you be willing to take a shot at this? Oh, first,
yeah, I was smiling at the more nuclear in Ukraine. We have already energy proficiency, and we're thinking of where to use this energy. And adding more nuclear in Ukraine is just like a question why and at what expense. And that's again comes to the numbers. So if you want to build, for example, 2 nuclear reactors, like how much would that cost and who will pay for that? It's definitely cheaper to build than green energy, but that's a question to the government and whether they're seeing the real numbers.
Yeah, and if I may to answer this brilliant question, like definitely, and this one honestly saying one of the key questions. Our European integration together with Moldova, we are integrating to NCE. So this is a European network of electricity grid. We are planning to do this in 2023. And this is definitely the game changer. And it will be a big, it could solve the problem. It could solve the problem. This is the next big thing that like in the US and our partners in the European Union should help us. Like you remember a couple of years ago, the unbundling of Naftogaz, gas pipeline, which were the problem and yet is a problem. The same will be with the electricity market. So we are about to disconnect from Russia and Belarus and to connect our grid to European Union. What it will react. So we are connected together with Moldova. It will make not only like a small part of Ukraine that already integrated to Europe, which called the Burштyn Island, basically owned by the DTEC, and this is the factory that was led by our prime minister. So he knows how to integrate Ukraine to Europe. So basically, we are selling the coal-generated electricity to Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and Czech Republic. And like why integrating the whole of Ukraine with our green and nuclear, like we could sell more decarbonized mix to Europe. So we are helping to decarbonize Europe. We could earn from this. We could stop balancing by the coal generation and we could start balancing with our guys from the European Union. And this could be something that will help to integrate our market. So definitely this is the key. For us to integrate with our partners, and this is a question of a CBAM where it comes. This is a question of Russia will be definitely undermining this integration, and also this is about like as Alina rightly mentioned and everybody, the money for the decarbonization. Like yes, we do need this money for reconfigure our outdated energy system because I always asking the question like what type of energy my kids will be consuming here. And this is like not enough. And how could we build the new facility? Same with the gas. We have huge amount of gas. Like we need to extract this gas as much as possible right now with the best environmental standards, because it will be the gas will be the next loser like the coal. So we have 10 to 15 years to extract more gas, to do the energy efficiency, to do the biogas, to do the hydrogen, to do a lot of stuff, to sell this gas to Europe maybe, and to earn money for our decarbonization. These are the plan with our colleagues from European Union.
Alex, you're suggesting that, as you say, gas may have 10 or 15 more years shelf life. So are you saying that you expect within 15 or 20 years, Ukraine to be overwhelmingly dependent on green energy?
I expect that the same, like you are not able to find investor for your coal mines, for your heat power station currently. Like nobody is investing in this, nobody. So like you are not able to do that. The same could be with the gas because gas is the next loser. Gas is like a transition fuel, and the gas dependency from Europe, from Russia, and from Arabic country, and also from the United States, will lead that the gas will be substituted by by energy efficiency, by hydrogen, by other stuff. So like why you started to extract, you need I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years before you start, having this gas. So it will be the same stuff in 10 to 15 to 20 years, maybe. Like nobody will invest in gas. So this is why we're sitting on a big deposit, and we need to have it to convert it into the asset for our nation, because it will be a stranded asset in 15 to 20 years, because it will be more renewables. It will be definitely more renewables, more energy efficient. It will be some other innovative technology, and we need to do it right here, right now. So we need to have some kind of a Ukraine Green Deal plan in order to reconfigure and to leapfrog in our development. This is a perfect chance to reconfigure our outdated economy.
Thank you. One aspect of Matt's question wasn't quite addressed, and I wonder if you might take a shot at it. The notion that Ukraine, Poland, and Romania might function as an energy triangle. Is there something to that in your judgment?
We are, as I said, we're already integrated. And for example, with Poland, recently we had a plan that we will connect our nuclear power station with the power line to Poland, and we will ship the electricity. But this is not the case anymore. And when we will connect to the European network, the Poland will definitely benefit from it. But it's more intergovernmental, international, because Poland is highly dependent on coal, and they have their own lobbies and their own problem with this. They have ambitious plans for the decarbonization. It also will cost for them huge amount of money. So definitely the Eastern European countries needs to partners with more developed Western European countries in order to, if we're saying about the climate neutral continent up to 2050, the question is who will pay for it? And we are benefit, and we are a developed nation because of our nuclear, because of the cheap nuclear current power station. This is why we have competitive economy. But they, as Alina rightly mentioned, when they will start to phase out, what will be the price of electricity for heat for our economy, whether it will be competitive for the European market. Definitely, these are the very complicated questions.
We have a question from Zinovy Broida. Read it. Under huge climate change around geographic center of the European continent, and I think he has in the Q&A a link if anyone wants to see it, and the redirection to circulatory economy. How do you see Ukrainian and also Moldovan perspectives to become integrated into 3 Cs initiatives, where green energy constantly moves to priority 1 role? Anders, you want to take a shot at this about Ukraine and Moldova in the 3 Cs initiative?
Well, of course, we are a natural part of it, so I don't see what there is particular to say about it. To draw on what Alex just said, think of it that Ukraine today has 55% of nuclear energy, 11% renewable, and not quite 10% hydropower. So it's about a balance of about 30%, which is essentially coal power. So Ukraine in this perspective comes out quite well. I wanted to return to what Alina touched upon, that nuclear power could come from France. Well, not really. It's Westinghouse that has established itself in Ukraine as the alternative supplier of nuclear fuel to Rosatom. So Ukraine today gets its nuclear fuel from 2 sources, and we also have Holtec that is developing nuclear waste facilities in Ukraine. So it seems that it's these 2 American companies, Westinghouse and Holtec, that are coming in and playing a major role there. I must say that I haven't heard France coming in particularly. I don't know why, but I have not heard any discussion about it. Alina and Alex might know more about it. But I think it's quite important what Alex said, that Ukraine is now turning to the European electricity market. Of course, there is not only one EU grid, there are several divided grids in Europe, but Ukraine is clearly getting into the Central European grid, and you can see that as part of a 3 Cs initiative.
Thank you. We're getting close to the end of our event. Let me ask each of you the following question. Will this current green energy dilemma be fixed, and how and when? Please limit your answer to 1 minute. Roman, I'll give you the burden of taking a first shot at this.
I think it has to be fixed, and within the next year, because of the disproportionate impact already mentioned of green investment in Ukraine's overall investment portfolio. It is the non-resolution, kind of the policy drift on this is toxic for Ukraine's overall investment reputation, which it needs to improve. So I give it a year, otherwise the consequences will be even more serious than they are now.
Hey, Alina.
Well, for me, green energy crisis, it's not the green energy crisis, it's electricity market crisis. And it has to be solved within a year or two, especially if we want to join NCOE in 2023. So by 2023, we just have no other option, but we just have to have everything fixed.
All right. Alex?
I'm less optimistic as our business colleagues. Business needs to be over-optimistic to succeed. I would say that the state will continue paying, 80-90% of money for renewables because of the pressure that is done by the international, and also this roundtable I could consider as the one who raised the attention toward this issue. And like the government will continue to pay and continue to start working like what to do with these areas, what to do with this debt. Maybe we could issue a green bonds or like just bonds for Ukrenergo would issue bonds for paying back. But still, we will have the problem with the network because the more renewables are integrated into the system, the less technically is the Ukrainian government or Ukrainian energy system is able to balance it. And we're already now seeing some shortage or like some renewable electricity being switched off or nuclear power station being switched off, allowing the renewables to happen. But we will still continue to see this fight between different lobbies. One come from renewables, another come from hydro, another from nuclear, another from coal. And we have two victims, like population and the industry. So we'll see the reconfiguration of different stakeholders trying to benefit from the situation. And for a couple of years, it will be unstable, I would say.
Andrews, last word is yours.
Thank you. Well, I basically agree with what has been said, but most of all, what Alina said, that this is not an energy crisis or electricity crisis, it's a government decision-making crisis. How can it be resolved? I think that it needs some external strong impact. The only force that can deliver that is the US government. I hope that President Biden, when he sees President Zelensky next month, will make a big push. This should really be at the top of the agenda. Make policy making and decision making in Ukraine somehow functioning. Otherwise, I don't see how it could be solved, just like Alex.
Andrews, thank you very much. Thank you, Alina. Thank you, Roman. Thank you, Alex. This has been wonderful. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll be doing more on energy in Ukraine in the months to come. It remains very important.
Yes, thank you very much. And I was really happy to see all of my friends